My name's Andy Wallace, and for years through our local church, we've had the unique blessing to be able to help some families in our community that were in need by getting Christmas and delivering it to the family. And we made it a family event. We would have the boys go with us to get the items, to wrap them, and to deliver them. My only frustration was it was a once-a-year type venue, and it generally was different families every year based on the needs presented through our church. And so earlier this spring, I was on the phone with a good friend of mine, Tommy Hurst, who's on the board of KICKO, and I was sharing with him that I wish that there was an opportunity for me to do something year-round, something that I could do with my boys. I had reached out to a number of parachurch ministries, and reasonably many of them had expressed that for their insurance or their needs, having a 5 and an 8-year-old boy on their ministry site was not practical, and I understood that. And so I was really just kind of frustrated that I wasn't able to plug that hole through the year and that it would just be Christmas before that potentially happened again. And Tommy said, "Have you ever heard of KICKO Ministries?" And of course I hadn't, and so he shared that story, and I immediately called Michael and established contact with him. And he said, "Why don't you come to one of our sidewalk Sunday schools?" And so I understood what that was, and our schedule was available, and I knew that great ideas are never acted on unless you prioritize them. So we said, "Hey, we're coming this week." And that Friday, I picked Zach up from school, and we zipped downtown and went to Western Heights. I just want to tell you that story because the meaning of it for me as a dad and the impact that it had on Zach was priceless. As we pulled into Western Heights, my son asked some very honest questions. And so we got out, and the Sidewalk Sunday School went as planned, and we just planted ourselves in the middle of that tarp with those boys. And we loved on them and high-fived and laughed with them and sang with them. And as that day went on, as that hour unfolded, at one point, about halfway through, I remember Zach tugging on my sleeve, which generally means bend down, I need to whisper. And his question was, "Dad, where are their dads at?" And of course, that's a question I couldn't answer in that environment. And I was choked back, and I said, "Zach, you're gonna have to wait till we get in the truck, and I'll tell you, we'll talk about that." And one of the boys came up to me and said, "Mr. Andy, can you stay right here? Can you stay right here just for a second? I got something I want to give you." And I said, "Oh, son, you don't need to give me anything. Just being with you today was a great pleasure. Don't worry about that." He said, No, I insist. Please wait." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be here packing up. I'll be glad to wait on you." And he came running back. And I'll never forget, he had this scraggly piece of paper. And he said, "Here, it's my phone number. Would you give me a call sometime?" But before I could even start with the questions that had been presented, as we were pulling off, Zach said, "Well, what about these kids, Dad? What if it's raining? How do they do that?" And I said, "Well, I'm sure they go inside the Boys and Girls Club that was there on campus." And he said, "Well, do they not have a church to go to like we do?" And I said, "Well, there may be churches in this community, but they may not have a means to get there. And for a lot of them, if KICKO and folks like us don't come and show them Jesus, they won't have a church experience like you and I have." My concern with my kids is that they're raised in church and they know a lot about God, but they haven't practically experienced and shared God through the course of their adolescence in a way that's real and relevant. And so I immediately could see that KICKO was a ministry that I wanted to plug my family into, not just to donate of our money, which is vitally needed in a ministry of this type, but of our time and our talents. As Bill puts it, when we go on a mission trip or when we deliver Christmas, those are great venues to bless people. And it was the start by which I'd had this conversation with Tommy. But those are experiences for those families. And those experiences happen, and then they are something that's in the history. And what I think is unique about KICKO Ministries is that they create experiences, but more important than experiences, they cultivate relationships with these kids. They plug into their lives and they walk alongside these kids. They're walking with that kid, and they're loving that kid, and they're pointing that kid to the truth, and they're being salt and light in that kid's lives. And when we went just a few weeks ago to the annual banquet, and I got to see DeMarcus stand up and say, "You know, I grew up in a community where everyone around me today is either in prison, dead, on dope, or doing something that's not productive. But Bill and Janice Clark came every week and invited me to come to Sidewalk Sunday School. And as a result, I now have a life with purpose, and I know the love of Jesus, and in a few weeks I'm going to go off and serve my country. I got to see in just that 5 or 10 minute testimony the true impact of their ministry, that it's not just experiences, but it's relationships that they're creating that are changing kids for eternity.